Today's video is sponsored by Silver Falls Trading Company, a veteran-owned business specializing in organic, single-source, direct trade coffees from all over the world. At Silver Falls, your coffee is not roasted until you order it. Visit their website to check out all the available flavors, and remember, when you support my sponsor, you support this channel, and I sure appreciate it.
Hey, Peter, man, check out Channel 9. It's the breast exam. Woo!
All right, so I was just sitting here working on this amplifier, and customer called me back about that Ampeg and said that, well, it's been a week since he got it back, and called me back just now and said that it's popped again. So something's not right. I told him just bring it straight over, and we're gonna look at it with him here, hopefully. So stay tuned for that.
Let me tell you something. So when I plugged it up, I turned it on, went downstairs, got my guitar, came back, and it was buzzing. It was making a kind of a hum. Yeah. And all I did was just barely touch this.
Touch what?
This right here.
Oh, that cap? That cap? The old cap?
I just touched that, and it went away. Everything was fine. So I started playing it, and I played it for probably 30 or 40 minutes, and
really?
No problems. It sounded great. Sounded like it did, you know, when I first did it.
Right.
First got it back from you, and I was on my phone trying to switch to the next tune I was going to learn on TV, and all of a sudden it popped again, and smoke started coming out right here. Because I immediately turned it off and yanked it.
Was this tonight?
Yes.
How long ago?
Not long ago. I mean, I texted you right after it.
Okay.
Right after it did it. Because my wife just walked back. She just walked back in the house. She was out with one of my daughters. She goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "It popped again." And I said, "I'm glad it did it at home, not at church."
Not church, yeah.
It just had like a weird kind of hum to it. And all I did was, I didn't hit it or anything. I just kind of touched it, and it
just touched that old cap.
Yeah, and then the hum went away.
Well, the old cap's not even connected, so I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe it's a bad ground. You touched
that kind of big silver cap on the bottom there. I just barely touched. I didn't like rattle it or anything. I just barely touched it, and the hum went away. It wasn't like, ear-splitting hum, but it was, it was definitely noticeable. And as soon as I touched it, it went back to just silent. Everything was fine. And I mean, I didn't have it cranked. I had it, it wasn't like I had it wide open or anything.
Okay, I think I have a good idea what the problem might have been. Now, what's going to happen if you lift the ground on one of these, and if you want to come look at it, you can. You might be able to see it on the little monitor here. If you lift the grounds on any of these, or especially on all of them, like if these caps stop getting good, because they're getting ground through this little solder point right here, the solder blob, right there, and this is I think is that the bias resistor? I believe it is for the output. That's the bias resistor for the output. So if that kind of goes, you're going to get a spike in voltage, or if these alternately, and that looks like, I did ground that. I got some good heat on that, and I thought I grounded it pretty good, and that's where everything's getting its ground. But that's the only way. But that touching this would have caused a buzz to appear or disappear. And it might have been just the fact that by touching that, you were kind of moving the chassis enough to move this. Okay. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I can think of at the moment. Something else might occur to me, but I'm gonna approach this. I'm just gonna get rid of this and drill a hole here, make that bigger if I need to, and put an actual ground point right there. Okay. You haven't blown the 3-amp fuse, and that's the fuse that this thing calls for. So I mean, that's good news in a sense, because it means that most likely your transformer's still intact. And that was my big fear when you brought it this time, because it was like, oh shit, because about the only thing left would be the transformer. I was thinking, I'm gonna go ahead and ground. I'm gonna ground this differently anyway. I'm gonna drill a hole in the chassis and put your ground wire over here. I didn't do it last time. I was kind of reluctant to do it, because I'm usually reluctant to do that on vintage amps, start drilling holes in people's stuff without permission. But on this, it's not that collectible anyway, and I don't know what I was thinking. I should have just done it, but we'll do it right.
It didn't seem like it didn't pop as loud as it popped in church the other day. It popped pretty loud in church. Tonight it just kind of started smoking.
Right.
So I don't know if that's.
It was just smoking?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't hear Did it pop before it smoked, or was it just smoking?
I don't recall it.
Was it still making noise when it was smoking?
Yeah, I mean, I turned it off right away though because I was afraid that.
Well, that's actually really good then.
Okay. I was afraid that maybe it was getting ready to catch fire again, so I just turned it off.
No, I think because this thing is still warm. This the bias resistor on this is still warm.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times too, you might be burning off some because if you leave it on for a long time, you might be also it gets getting hot, and it's also burning off some of the dust that's kind of around in there. But again, I don't even know if this is like if this is the problem. But we're just going to do this as a matter of course anyway, because it's. This is absolutely what the problem was. Okay, there's this is rivet. I forgot that this is riveted here and here. It's riveted at the same spot that the other thing was that the little terminal strip was riveted on. Okay. It was riveted there also. So when you move, or if that got moved at all, because it's so massive,
right?
Carting it around, putting it in the car, back and forth to you and the church and everything, would move that around because of the mass, and yeah, it just decoupled that whole blob. That blob, it just wasn't on there as it wasn't taken like I'd hoped. Okay. And like I said, when I had it here, it killed every bit of noise because I was getting noise also. Okay. And I had to route it the way that I did and ground this wire over here, there. And I know that's what it is. Because with that moving,
that's where the smoke was coming from too.
Yeah,
it's right there.
Yep,
I noticed that.
That's where all your mains, I'm sorry, your secondary high voltage, your B plus, is coming from too. Okay. So that's where everything is grounded. Okay. So that's like, just that. There's probably so many micro sparks and everything. Anything that would have been around, like any dust, and this thing's dusty still in there, but any dust or anything like that would have been just caught on fire, and that's probably what was going on. Okay. Okay, so I just went ahead and removed this, scratched this up real nice, and got a good bolt on here. So I think we've got a good ground for everything that's coming from over here. I think what was happening is the way that this was mounted, when you moved this around, this old can, it was dislodging the ground momentarily and probably had some voltage spikes as a result when it recoupled the ground. So that's kind of the theory I'm going on at the moment. And then I went ahead and moved this ground over to here, like I probably should have done to begin with, but now it's right. So reason I didn't is because I didn't want to drill a hole in this vintage chassis, and that's usually my MO on this kind of stuff, but this is not collectible or anything anyway, so that's what we're doing. Alright, we got it fired back up. We got 77 watts. That's about where we were last time. About 70 to 80 watts or so is where we have been, so that's the right range for it. I'm wondering if this is just because it's open or if we've got a bad tube now. It's definitely noisier than it was. That's not. I'm wondering if we might not have a bad preamp tube again. Oh shit! No, we've got a bad output tube. We blew an output tube. Huh. See right here? Yeah, we got a bad output tube. See, this one's gone to air. See the white right there? Yeah. It's a bad output tube. Huh. I don't know if I've got any 7591s, man. Let me see. When did you have these put in?
I bought them off Tube Depot and put them in myself. I mean, I never put any hours on it because it never would run. So yeah. they were new. I
mean, I don't know if I have like a matched pair of them, you know what I mean? Right. That's the thing. Yeah, this is, yep. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's definitely a bad tube. Oh, shit. Oh, no, look at that. Look at that.
Man, that thing just...
It just cracked it. Look. I noticed before, when I was screwing with these, I was like, man, you know, this is obviously not made to retain this type of 7591 because it has the real thin base. And this is made for the thicker bases, like the taller bases, but it's not really made for that. But this thing has gotten in there and dug in and just popped that tube.
Wow.
I'll be damned. I have never seen that. I have never seen that before. That is a new one on me, dude. I mean, I knew it had gone to air just by the look of the top of it, but that's a new one on me. This one might still be good if you're lucky, but you would want to match pair.
Yeah, right. This is the amp from hell, man. So you think that ground may have had something to do with that?
Well, not now.
No,
not
but
now.
But I mean, before, you think that might have caused? Would that have caused the tube to blow?
It was causing the buzz.
I got you.
For sure.
I got you.
Because it wasn't getting an excellent ground like it really needs to. Okay. But with that blown like that, I mean, for me to try to track down buzz, or that buzz was probably coming from here with what this is happening, you know. Right. There we go. But see what I mean? The base is real thin on these, and it's really made for the taller bases that would come up to about right there or something, you know. So if you do order some of these, you'll need the ones with the taller base for this. Okay. I can see if I've got some 7591s. I actually think I might.
Okay.
I hope it all comes out. Come on out. Yes. That is just, look at it.
And it
that just sheared.
Wow.
That just sheared right off. And look, it's like perfect almost.
Huh. Yeah, because when I ordered tubes, Larry told me what to order. He said, this is what you need to order. He sent me a list. He said, just get on Tube Depot and order this.
He's right. And these are good tubes.
Yeah, and I ordered exactly what he said.
Because these will handle, because they're Russian, and they'll handle probably extra volt. They'll probably handle, you know, twice the dissipation of what they're supposed to be rated at. And that's just the way Russian tubes are. They're made very well. But yeah, man, that's you're gonna have to have some tubes. Let me see what I've got on hand, and I just hope these don't have the same problem. I don't think they're gonna. Yeah, see there.
Yeah, the seat's a lot better.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Because the prongs are a lot deeper.
Yeah, see that base is just, it comes up where it needs to be. Volume's back. I want to change this V1 tube. Whatever it is in the preamp. Because when I pull that, you know.
Everything's fine.
Yeah. See, whatever it is in the preamp. But this buzz right here is not as bad as it was when you came back, was it?
No.
Okay. It seems noisier in that right now than it was. You know, we don't have the top on it, so it doesn't have that shield. That would be part of it. The output tubes are definitely a problem. The ones you had in there, but it's not all of it, and it's not that tube. It's got a good ground. It's not that. Like I said, I cleaned the chassis, and it's got a better ground now than it did have. But I don't know. It does just seem to me to be noisier than it was. All right, so some good news. I think I might have narrowed down where the problem is with this and where the noise is coming from on this amp. As you can see here, I've pulled the input jacks out of the amp, and I've just got them kind of dangling here in space. The problem is, I think that this is not getting a good ground. So when I plug into one of these, it's not getting a good ground through the other, and it's setting up a ground loop. So I'm just going to rebuild this entire, all of this. And I'm going to rebuild it just on a completely different couple of jacks. So what I've done so far is I stuck these jacks in the amp itself, and then I've soldered the grounds together, and that's just going to give us a base to kind of start from. This will also give me a chance to use the helping hand that was sent to me. I bolted it to just a little piece of wood here, and that'll give us a base to work from. So we're just gonna, I'll grab this a couple different ways here, and we'll get to work on it. Okay, I have the new input jacks back in, and clearly I still have a problem. You can hear it. And right now they're just kind of sat in there. I've tried it with them bolted or nutted in correctly, but I'm wondering, see that? We have absolutely have some kind of ground loop. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Let's try this. Now, granted, I'm out I'm out on the desk. There's no shielding on this. Yeah, the problem is we're not grounded. So let's get a ground wire on it. All right, so we'll go from the ground to, and we're quiet. Pretty much absolutely quiet like that. Some of that, we're obviously getting some noise, some things being introduced. I've got my soldering iron nearby, which is introducing some noise. I've got my computer right by it, which is introducing some noise into all this, but generally that's a hell of a lot quieter than it was. I mean, that's dead quiet by comparison to what it was. And it absolutely is the case that we're getting a ground loop. And the problem is we're going to have to find a way to isolate these inputs when we put them in this cabinet, or this chassis, because they cannot touch the chassis. So I'm going to have to find some sleeves to put around those so that it isolates them from the chassis. They just simply cannot touch. And I think if we can do that, we can get it all to go away. Right there, I mean, that's doable. It actually had both ends. I mean, this is a big no-no. They had both from the factory. They had both ends of this shielded wire grounded. So they had a ground on that shield. You see the ground wire there on that shielded wire? On the other end of the shielded wire, I've left it off. You see it's just kind of dangling there for the moment, but it's got that gator clip on it so we can get a grounded signal. But that was actually also grounded to the jacks that we had in there before. It was grounded. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. I mean, it's dangling loose right now, but it was grounded to the ground. So that's the way it was from the factory, grounded at both ends. That's just something you don't do. How am I going to sleeve these jacks? Because I don't think I have anything, that I can sleeve them with. We'll come up with something. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to need to do is to isolate these jacks. These jacks are metal, obviously, on the grounding. So none of this can touch any part of the chassis, so what you got to do is you got to get something that's an insulator. And in this case, I'm going to use an insulated wafer washer, and that's going to insulate the back edge of this thing from the chassis. But I also have to insulate this little sleeve right here, the threads from the inside of the chassis. And the way I think I'm going to try to do that, I'm going to cut some heat shrink tubing. I'm going to stick it around it and see if I can make this work. Now this may or may not work, but I'm going to see if I can make it work. And if not, I might have to actually order some plastic input jacks and go that route. I don't think I have any plastic input jacks on hand, although I might have. I'll look around and see if I've got any plastic ones. If I do, we can go that route. But first I want to try this. I want to try taking some of this, and what we're going to do is cut it to size. We'll stick it around down there, and then we will shrink it down onto it. Obviously we'll leave some threads you know, that we can put the nut to on the outside, but we're going to have a sliver of this stuff on there and shrink it down. I think this is going to do the job, hopefully. Okay, this is going to give me a chance to break in this Irwin Unibit Christmas tree bit that somebody sent me. So I guess that's a good thing, but we're going to have to go up to a 1/2 inch because in order to make these work, well, and any isolated input jack is going to need more space because they're just larger around. But I'm going to try to make these work with the shrink tubing on them, and the shrink tubing adds a lot to it, so it's going to have to be out to about a 1/2 inch. So I think if we drill each of these out to a 1/2 inch, we'll be okay. So let's that means going down one step here. Okay, so there's one. There's the other one. Okay, now I think we're going to be able to make it work now. Okay, just got some cleaning up to do on these. Yeah, I really can't account for why it just suddenly started seeming so loud. I don't know, man. Maybe being jostled around the car or something, like dislodged the... Because these are all in separate pieces. Like this front piece is not the same piece as this bottom piece of the chassis. The side pieces are a different piece. The back is a different piece. And it's all just kind of, you know, screwed together. So if the connection to those screws is not great, then you can imagine that you're just not going to get a very good ground connection from one piece to the other. So okay, I'm going to use a couple pieces of this shrink tubing. I'm going to cut up some of it because we're going to use this to serve as to help us isolate the inside part of this jack. So I'm going to put one piece here. I'm going to put another piece on this one. That'll isolate the inside part of it. And I could just use, actually could just use both, couldn't I? Could use both on one piece. We don't want to remove too much of this. We just want to get enough that it'll slip over it with some effort. Like that. Just like that. Okay, so that's got the inside bit. Now we've got to do the ring. Okay, so that's going to isolate, that's going to space that and isolate that part from the side. And we're going to have to do something on the front as well, and we don't have a lot to work with because this chassis is so thick. I'm hoping to get, really this is like I said, this is kind of a, I'm just rigging this more or less because anything that I order is not going to be ideal either because this chassis is so thick. But I think I'm going to be able to make this work. I'm just going to have to have a thin enough washer on the front to make it work. See, like that one would be perfect. Okay, so I did find 2 washers that will isolate the front. So I've got the front nut isolated from the chassis. I've got the center shaft isolated from the chassis, and I have the rear isolated from the chassis with a piece of this stuff, this shrink tubing. So yeah, the shrink tubing comes in real handy when you're doing stuff like this. I've used it before in the same sort of scenarios, but I hope this is going to get it done, and we'll get this amplifier back into the customer's hands. Okay, now I've got the input jacks all wired in and ready to go. The whole shebang is a lot cleaner anyway, so it's much better. Also, I went ahead and wired this like you would see a normal Fender with 2 68Ks, 2 grounded jacks, and we just did it that way rather than trying to emulate the thing that they had going before, which was just, to me, it was just a mess. So we're gonna try this and see how it goes. Hopefully that will eliminate the problem. Fingers crossed. Man, I hope so. Alright, well, here we go again. Moment of truth. It's plugged in. It's... oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think this has got it. I think this has got it. Oh yeah. Hear how quiet that is now? Whereas before it was just... you know. Wow. Hear all that noise now. What's going on with that? The fuck? I think that's an output tube. Something is not liking something. That's an output tube, I believe. Pretty pretty sure that was a problem with one of those output tubes. I tapped that and that went away. Okay, so I've spoken to the customer on this a little further, and we've agreed that it's probably a good thing for me to go ahead and change coupling capacitors. These old Cornell Dublier capacitors, you know, I could leave them in here. They're not malfunctioning right now, I don't think. They test okay in circuit, but it's probably, you know, considering the age and considering what happened to this other capacitor when it blew up, and the fact that it's already been back a couple times, I'd rather just go ahead and knock those out and make sure that those aren't going to be a problem in the near future. Also, the reverb seems a little bit weak, and at one point when I was messing with this, I noticed there seemed to be some DC on the send cable, because I grabbed it and I was grabbing my guitar at the same time, and I just got a slight shock. So I don't know, is this thing capacitor coupled? I need to look at the reverb. Let's look at the reverb. I'm pretty sure it's capacitor coupled. Where is it? It's right, yep. C10 right there, that 0.47 capacitor may be malfunctioning, so we need to definitely replace that one. I think it's this, is it this Tropical Fish one? It is. It's that one right there. So I need to replace that capacitor for sure. I'll probably go ahead and again yank those Cornell Dublier. There's one little capacitor over here, C4, that I might go ahead and replace as well. So those will at least have been done, and maybe that will prevent this thing from coming back again. Okay, so there are those capacitors replaced. Here's the one for the reverb replaced, and here are these other 4 over here that I've done, and hopefully that will prevent this thing from failing again in the future. Let's give it a quick test, and I want to see if the reverb is a little bit stronger than it was. Okay, so got everything back together, finally ready to give it a bit of a test. I'm not going to crank it or anything, but there is a bit of an echo there, but it's not very strong. It doesn't seem as strong as it was whenever the amp first came to me, to be honest. But I think that it's probably down to the Compactron tube, because that's the one that takes care of the both sides of the reverb, and I don't have another one of those on hand. So the customer does, though. He has his old one that he replaced it with the last time he shotgunned all the tubes. So I've told him he might change that, and that could bring out the reverb some, but at least now I know it's not that capacitor. I know it's not going to be that capacitor for the foreseeable future, so I feel a little bit better about that. This thing is dead quiet now. Dead quiet. Actually, with the trim net, you can barely even notice it's on. So yeah, I'm a lot happier about the amp now, but this just goes to show, you know, there's you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't on some of this old stuff. And what I mean by that is if, you know, you go in and shotgun all the capacitors and you do everything that you think is going to probably fail within the next, you know, X number of years, you're going to always have somebody come along and say, well, you just ruined the amp, or, you know, you ruined the collectability of the amp, or it's not vintage anymore, yada, yada, yada. But if you don't do that, you know, the amp might come back 3 times, or, well, it came back twice, but it's been here 3 times total, like this one has. So, like I said, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Really, the best safe bet, if you're going to use something on a gig, in a gig situation, if you're going to leave it in a church and use it Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, the best thing to do is just go ahead from the outset and get it done right. But yeah, so that'll do it. I hope you guys enjoyed. For now, y'all take care.